Welcome back to G Fun Facts Online. Today we are diving deep into a mystery that has divided the scientific community for nearly a century. We are traveling back 66 million years to the Cretaceous floodplains of Montana, specifically the Hell Creek Formation. For decades, a debate has raged regarding the king of dinosaurs, Tyrannosaurus rex. We have always known T-Rex was the apex predator, the bone-crushing giant of its time. But for 80 years, paleontologists have been fighting a civil war over a ghost that lived in the shadow of the king. This is the story of Nanotyrannus. Was this creature simply a teenage T-Rex, an awkward adolescent destined to grow into a giant? Or was it a distinct species, a pygmy tyrant, that lived, hunted, and died alongside the T-Rex? As of late 2025, the debate that fractured paleontology has been blown wide open. Thanks to a series of groundbreaking studies in 2024 and 2025, a stunning new fossil skeleton, and a microscopic look at a throat bone, the verdict is finally in. Nanotyrannus has been resurrected. In this episode, we are going to break down exactly how new technology and old bones combined to rewrite the final chapter of the Age of Dinosaurs. To understand the magnitude of this revelation, we have to start with the history of this headache. It began back in 1942. A field crew from the Cleveland Museum of Natural History unearthed a skull in Montana. It was beautifully preserved and unmistakably a tyrannosaur. It had the sharp teeth, the boxy snout, and the forward-facing eyes. But it was tiny, barely 2 feet long. In 1946, it was described as a new species of Gorgosaurus. It wasn't until 1988 that legendary paleontologist Robert Bacher, along with colleagues Phil Curry and Michael Williams, re-examined this skull. They noticed something critical. The bones in the skull were fused tight. In the animal kingdom, fused bones are a sign of adulthood. Babies have loose bones to allow for growth. Bacher argued that this wasn't a baby anything. It was a pocket-sized predator, a new genus they christened Nanotyrannus lancensis, which translates to the small tyrant from the lance. That seemed to settle it. But science is rarely that simple. In 1999, paleontologist Thomas Carr published a seminal paper that changed everything. He argued that tyrannosaurs underwent drastic changes as they grew, a process called ontogeny. Carr proposed that the distinctive features of Nanotyrannus, like its higher tooth count, its compressed blade-like teeth, and its elongated snout, were simply juvenile traits. He argued these features would disappear as the animal bulked up into a T-Rex. Under this theory, the pygmy tyrant was demoted to a T-Rex. For 20 years, this was the consensus. Famous specimens like Jane, a juvenile tyrannosaur found by the Burpee Museum in 2001, were labeled as juvenile T-Rex. The idea of a separate small tyrannosaur species was treated as a fringe theory. Until now. The tide began to turn in January 2024. Researchers Nick Longrich and Evan Saida published a controversial study in Fossil Studies. They identified over 150 anatomical differences between Nanotyrannus and T-Rex. They argued that no amount of growth could transform one into the other. They also noted that the growth rings in the bones of Nanotyrannus specimens were packing together towards the outside. This is a crucial biological marker. When bone growth rings get tight, it means the animal is slowing down its growth. It effectively means the animal is reaching adulthood. But the real game changer, the moment that shifted the paradigm, arrived in October 2025. This came with the publication of a landmark paper in Nature by Lindsay Zano and James Napoli. The focus of their study was the dueling dinosaur specimen. This is one of the most spectacular fossils ever found. It was discovered in 2006, but was locked in legal battles and private storage for years. The fossil preserves a triceratops and a tyrannosaur buried together, seemingly in combat. When the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences finally acquired the specimen, Zano's team went to work. The tyrannosaur in this fossil, nicknamed Bloody Mary, became the Rosetta Stone the Nanotyrannus camp had been waiting for. The most shocking revelation came from the arms. We all know Tyrannosaurus rex is famous for its tiny, two-fingered arms. The logic of the Teen Rex hypothesis was that a juvenile's arms would start small and stay small as the body grew around them. Bloody Mary shattered this assumption. The specimen possessed massive, powerful arms. Proportionally, they were far longer than any T-Rex, whether adult or juvenile. But here is the smoking gun. The hand of this specimen preserved a clear, vestigial third finger. T-Rex has 2 fingers. This is a hard anatomical fact. For a Nanotyrannus to grow into a T-Rex, it would have to physically shrink its arms, lose a finger entirely, and completely restructure its shoulder girdle. As researcher Lindsay Zano noted, for Nanotyrannus to be a juvenile T-Rex, it would need to defy everything we know about vertebrate growth. Animals do not typically lose digits and shrink limbs as they mature from adolescence to adulthood. The differences didn't stop at the arms. The researchers counted the vertebrae in the tail. T-Rex typically has a long, balancing tail with roughly 40 to 44 vertebrae. The Nanotyrannus specimen, however, had only 35. Animals do not grow extra vertebrae in their tails as they age. This fixed anatomical difference was a nail in the coffin for the Teen Rex theory. But the scientific community demands rigorous proof. If the dueling dinosaurs provided the anatomical map, a study published just 2 months later in December 2025 provided the biological clock. Led by Christopher Griffin of Princeton University and published in Science, this team tackled the original 1942 Cleveland skull, the holotype that started it all. Since the skull lacked legs, paleontologists couldn't count the growth rings in the femur or tibia, which is the standard way to age a dinosaur. So the age of the original Nanotyrannus had always been ambiguous. Griffin used a novel technique. He sliced into the hyoid bone. The hyoid is a delicate, wishbone-shaped strut in the throat that supports the tongue. In many reptiles and dinosaurs, the hyoid preserves a record of growth similar to a tree trunk. When Griffin placed the Nanotyrannus hyoid under the microscope, he didn't see the wide, spacious rings of a fast-growing youngster. Instead, he found tight, compacted lines at the bone's surface. This is known as an external fundamental system, or EFS, and EFS only forms when an animal has stopped growing. It is the biological signature of maturity. Griffin stated that the throat bone did not lie. The holotype specimen, the very fossil that defined Nanotyrannus, was not a baby. It was an adult animal that died at full size. With the genus resurrected, researchers began re-examining all the fossils previously lumped into the juvenile T-Rex bin. They realized they weren't looking at just one species. The 2025 paper by Zano and Napoli proposed a split in the Nanotyrannus family tree. They identified 2 distinct species. The first is Nanotyrannus lancensis. This is the classic pygmy tyrant, represented by the original Cleveland skull and the new Bloody Mary specimen. It was the smaller of the two, a nimble hunter weighing around 700 to 800 kilograms, or about 1,500 pounds. The second species is Nanotyrannus lithius. This new species was named for the famous Jane specimen, which had previously been the poster child for the Teen Rex hypothesis. It turns out Jane was distinct from the lancensis type. The name Lithius comes from the river Lethe, the river of forgetfulness in mythology, symbolizing how the species was forgotten by science for so long. Nanotyrannus lithius was a larger, more robust animal, potentially reaching 1,200 kilograms or 2,600 pounds. This means the Hell Creek ecosystem wasn't just home to one tyrant, it was a dynasty of different species. So what did Nanotyrannus actually look like? If you were standing on a Cretaceous floodplain 66 million years ago, how would you tell it apart from a young T-Rex? First, look at the build. While T-Rex was a power walker built for endurance and crushing force, Nanotyrannus was built for speed. It was a speed demon with incredibly long metatarsals, or foot bones, and a gracile, lightweight frame. It was likely the cheetah to the T-Rex's lion. Then, look at the arms. As we mentioned, the arms were formidable. While T-Rex arms were small grappling hooks, Nanotyrannus had long, slashing forelimbs with large claws. They were likely used actively in hunting, perhaps to snag smaller, faster prey that T-Rex couldn't catch. Next, check the teeth. T-Rex is famous for its railroad spike teeth. They are thick, round bananas designed to crush bone. Nanotyrannus, however, had xiphidont teeth. These are thin, blade-like, and laterally compressed. These were slicing knives, not bone crushers. Finally, CT scans of the skull reveal a different brain structure. Nanotyrannus had a distinct arrangement of cranial nerves and sinuses, suggesting it engaged with its environment differently than its larger cousin. The validation of Nanotyrannus forces a complete rewrite of late Cretaceous ecology. For years, the dominant theory was something called ontogenetic niche partitioning. This idea suggested that T-Rex babies filled all the ecological roles. Hatchlings ate bugs, teenagers ate medium-sized dinosaurs, and adults ate the big stuff. In this model, T-Rex was so dominant it squeezed out all other mid-sized predators. The return of Nanotyrannus destroys this monopoly. It proves that the mid-sized predator niche was actually filled by distinct, specialized species. Imagine the Hell Creek ecosystem now. At the apex, you have the adult T-Rex, weighing 8 tons, hunting Edmontosaurus and Triceratops. In the middleweight category, you have Nanotyrannus lithius at 1.2 tons, taking down sub-adult herbivores. In the welterweight class, you have Nanotyrannus lancensis at 700 kilograms, chasing down swift ornithomimids and pachycephalosaurs. And finally, you have Dakotaraptor, weighing 300 kilograms, acting as the ambush predator. This was a diverse, complex, and dangerous world, far more crowded than we previously thought. Of course, science is rarely unanimous. Despite the overwhelming evidence of 2025, some paleontologists remain unconvinced. The juvenile T-Rex camp, led by researchers like Thomas Carr and Holly Woodward, has argued that the EFS found in the hyoid could be a false signal. They also suggest that the distinct features are just extreme individual variations. They point out that we still lack a complete growth series for T-Rex if we remove all the Nanotyrannus specimens. They ask, where are the actual teenage T-Rexes? Proponents of Nanotyrannus argue they are simply rare, or that fossils like the Jordan theropod represent the true juvenile T-Rex form, which looks nothing like Nanotyrannus. However, with the convergence of evidence from anatomy, specifically the arms, osteology, specifically the tail counts, and histology, specifically the growth rings, the burden of proof has shifted. The T-Rex hypothesis now has to explain how a dinosaur could shrink its arms, lose a finger, change its tooth shape from blades to crushers, and lose tail vertebrae as it grew. This is a biological feat that seems increasingly impossible. The resurrection of Nanotyrannus is more than just a name change. It is a testament to the self-correcting nature of science. For decades, we looked at the same bones and saw what we expected to see. We saw a baby king because we assumed the king ruled alone. But the fossils have finally spoken for themselves. Nanotyrannus was real. It was a fierce, agile, and successful predator that thrived in the shadow of giants for 1,000,000 years. The Pygmy Tyrant has reclaimed its throne, reminding us that even in the most studied rocks on Earth, there are still monsters waiting to be discovered. That wraps up this episode of G Fun Facts Online. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the resurrection of the Nanotyrannus. Stay curious.